The Forgotten Temple of the Moon. Secrets of the Andes. Whispers in the mountains high in the jagged spine of the Andes, where the peaks cut against the sky like teeth and clouds wrap themselves around the mountains like heavy shrouds. The old stories still breathe. The Quechua people who live in scattered villages along the ridges tell of spirits who wander at night, of gods who once ruled the world from the mountaintops, and of places so sacred that even speaking their names is forbidden. Among these whispered tales, one legend has endured for centuries, the story of the Temple of the Moon. Unlike the great stone citadel of Machu Picchu that tourists marvel at today, this temple has never been seen in the daylight of the modern world. It is said to be hidden deep within a valley that sunlight touches only once a year, built not by the Incas but by an older people whose names have been erased from time. The Spanish conquistadors who stormed through South America in the 16th century left behind dusty chronicles of their campaigns. Most were obsessed with gold, a euro, El Dorado, treasures of the sun god Inti, a euro, but tucked within those fading manuscripts are odd references to a different kind of treasure. Silver, moonstone, and strange altars dedicated not to the sun but to the moon goddess, Mama Kia. Some records speak of soldiers who vanished after chasing rumors of a silver temple in the Andes. Others mention a euro darkness in the high peaks, where men lose their minds and never return. A euro for centuries, no one pursued these clues seriously. Explorers searched for golden cities, not temples of silver. But in the early 20th century, a British archaeologist named Edward Halden came across one of these forgotten manuscripts in the archives of Seville. Unlike most, Halden was not looking for wealth, a euro, he was chasing mysteries. And the more he read, the more convinced he became that the Temple of the Moon was not just a myth. The manuscript of Hernán de Rojas. The manuscript Halden found was written by Hernán de Rojas, a conquistador whose name appears only briefly in Spanish records. His writings, stained with ink and weathered by time, describe a small detachment of soldiers who broke away from Pizarro Euro's main force and marched deep into the mountains. They were told by local guides that a hidden sanctuary existed where a euro-oath pale goddess a euro was worshipped. Rojas wrote of days of climbing a euro-othro paths where no man should walk, a euro of hearing chanting carried by the wind, and of seeing silver masks half buried in the soil. Then, his tone changes. The final entry in his account is abrupt and chilling, a euro the moon is full tonight. The natives refuse to go further. They say the mountain is alive. One of my men swears he heard singing in a language none of us know. We are close. I feel it, but something watches us. If this reaches Spain, let it be known a euro, we sought the Temple of the Moon, and we were warned to turn back. God forgive us. A euro. No further word was ever recorded of Rojas or his men. They vanished without a trace. For Halden, this was the spark. He became obsessed with the idea that the Temple of the Moon was not only real but still buried somewhere in the Andes, untouched for centuries. He began compiling local legends, speaking to Quechua elders, and comparing ancient maps to Rojas Euro's descriptions. And slowly, a picture began to emerge. Local legends and warnings the villagers Halden questioned never spoke directly about the temple. Instead, they told stories of Euro ovally of Shados Euro where the moon goddess punished the arrogant. Some said that during a lunar eclipse, the goddess herself descended to drink the blood of those who defied her. Others whispered about a crown of silver shaped like the crescent moon, worn by priests who could command the stars. An old woman in a village near Cusco told Halden, Euro some places do not want to be found. They hide themselves until it is too late. The Temple of the Moon is such a place. If you go looking, the goddess will know. She will call you to her. And you will not return. A euro. But for every warning, there was also a clue. Fragments of stories about rivers that vanish into the earth, about mountains that glow under moonlight, about caverns lined with silver walls. Piece by piece, Halden believed he was narrowing in on the location of the temple. The expedition begins by the spring of 1922. Halden had assembled a small team. Professor Edward Halden Euro, the archaeologist, leader of the expedition. Maria Alvarez Euro, a Peruvian historian fluent in Quechua, who became their translator and cultural guide. James Carter Euro, a British explorer known for navigating the Amazon. Alejandro Rivas Euro, a Quechua guide who grew up in the Andes and knew its dangers better than anyone. Two porters from a nearby village, hired to carry supplies. Their goal was simple in words but near impossible in reality, to follow the faint trails of Herna and de Rojas and uncover the lost Temple of the Moon. They carried little more than maps, journals, food, climbing gear, and a few old manuscripts Halden had painstakingly copied. Each man and woman had their own reasons for joining a Euro, some for knowledge, some for adventure, some for the possibility of treasure. None could imagine what awaited them. Into the Andes are not kind to strangers. The team faced biting winds, thin air, and paths that seemed carved for ghosts rather than humans. Carter recorded in his journal, the mountains rise like walls. There are places where the cliffs lean so close together that no sunlight enters, even at noon. We march in silence, each breath like knives in the lungs. Sometimes I think I hear whispers when the wind howls but when I turn, there is nothing there. Rivas warned them not to travel at night. The mountains, he said, belong to the spirits after dark. Still, Halden pressed on. The closer they came to the valley described in Rojas's account, the stranger their journey became. They found broken stones carved with moon symbols, half buried beneath moss. They discovered a stretch of forest where the trees grew twisted, their branches forming shapes that looked like serpents. One night, Alvarez woke the camp, swearing she had heard a woman singing in the distance a haunting, lilting melody carried by the wind. The porters grew restless. One refused to go further, muttering about curses. The other stayed but walked with his head low, clutching a charm around his neck. The Valley of Shadows at last, after 2 weeks of climbing, they reached it, a valley hidden between two sheer cliffs, so narrow and deep that sunlight barely touched it. The air was unnaturally still. No birds sang, no animals stirred, only the faint trickle of water from a stream that vanished underground. Rivas looked uneasy. This is the place, he said. The Valley of Shadows. Halden felt his heart race. The manuscript of Rojas had spoken of such a valley. Every clue had led here. He was certain they stood at the threshold of the Temple of the Moon. That night, as the team camped at the Valley edge, the moon rose full over the mountains. Its light poured into the valley like silver fire. And for the briefest moment, they saw it, the faint outline of a staircase carved into the rock, glowing under the moonlight as if the mountain itself had revealed a hidden secret. Halden whispered, they found it. But Maria Alvarez, staring at the staircase, felt a chill run down her spine. Or perhaps, she thought, it had found them. The silver staircase. The night after the glowing staircase appeared, no one slept. The valley was cloaked in a silence that pressed against the ears, so deep it made even the smallest sound boots shifting, a cough, the snapping of twigs echo unnaturally. Halden stood at the edge of camp, staring into the darkness where the staircase had been revealed. The moonlight was fading now, and with it, the stone steps were once again swallowed by shadows. Yet the image of them burned in his mind. Go at first light, he declared. Maria Alvarez shook her head. The elders warned us. They said the temple reveals itself only under the moon. To enter by day may be a mistake. Rivas nodded in agreement, his brow furrowed. This is a place of power. The mountain does not follow human time. It opens when it wishes. But Halden was too far gone in his obsession. For years he had dreamed of this moment, and he could not bear to wait another night. Against their better judgment, the others followed. The descent at dawn, the team packed their supplies and approached the cliff wall where the staircase had appeared. To their astonishment, though no moonlight touched it, the stone steps were still visible now, faint but real. Carved directly into the mountainside, they descended at a sharp angle into the valley below. The staircase was treacherous worn smooth by centuries, some steps broken or crumbling. The higher cliffs loomed on either side, casting the descent in shadow. The stream they had heard before now gurgled faintly, vanishing into cracks beneath the rocks. Like walking into the mouth of the earth, Carter muttered. Halfway down, Alvarez noticed something carved into the walls beside the staircase. Symbols. They were faint, nearly erased by time, but recognizable. Crescents. Serpents. Human figures bowing before a radiant moon. These are not Inca, she whispered, tracing one with her fingers. This is older, much older. Rivas gave her a sharp look. Older than the Inca means forgotten. And things forgotten should stay that way. but Halden urged them on. The silver gate at the bottom of the staircase, the valley opened into a clearing unlike anything they had seen before. The ground was flat and eerily smooth, almost as if it had been paved. At the far end stood what looked like a massive archway of stone, its surface gleaming faintly as though dusted with silver. A gate. The arch was carved with even more symbols, but here they were clearer, a great crescent moon at the top, flanked by two serpents coiling downward. Beneath the arch, a dark passage stretched into the mountain. The team stood in silence, each of them feeling the weight of what lay before them. Carter finally broke the silence. So do we knock? No one laughed. Instead, Alvarez approached the arch. She ran her hands along the carvings. S not just decoration. These are instructions. She translated what she could from the ancient Quechua inscriptions. Only those who carry the light of the moon may enter. Only those who walk without pride may pass. Rivas frowned. Moonlight. That means this place opens only at night. Or it means, Halden countered, that we must carry torches. But when they lit their lanterns and stepped under the arch, something strange happened. The flames flickered violently, as if fighting to stay alive. One lantern went out completely. The passage beyond swallowed the light, drinking it into darkness so thick it felt alive. The porters balked. One dropped his pack, muttering prayers, and fled back up the staircase. The other stayed, but terror was written plain across his face. The hall of masks inside the passage, the walls were lined with niches. In each niche sat a mask, carved from silver, stone, or bone. The masks were strange, some human-like, others distorted with elongated features, gaping mouths, or hollow eyes. A few were cracked, but most gleamed as though freshly polished despite the centuries. Alvarez whispered, ceremonial masks. Offerings to Mama Kia, the moon goddess. Rivas shook his head. Not offerings. Warnings. The further they walked, the colder the air became. Their breath misted before them. The sound of dripping water echoed, though no water was visible. And always, the feeling of being watched pressed heavier on them. Halden, ever determined, scribbled notes and sketches as they went. His excitement drowned out his fear. This is it. The greatest discovery since Machu Picchu. Perhaps greater. The world will finally know the moon goddess was worshipped alongside the sun. But Maria Alvarez's eyes lingered on the masks. Each one seemed to look directly at them as they passed. And she thought, for just a moment, she saw one of the masks tilt its head ever so slightly. The chamber of the crescent pool at last, the passage opened into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. At the center lay a circular pool of water so perfectly still it looked like a mirror. Above it, a shaft in the ceiling allowed a single beam of sunlight to enter, though the sun itself was nowhere near overhead. The light struck the pool, which reflected it upward to illuminate carvings on the ceiling. A massive serpent coiled around a crescent moon. This is impossible, Carter muttered. That shaft shouldn't even be here. The Anglia there no way the sun should reach inside like that. S not the sun, Alvarez whispered, the moon. This chamber is aligned with lunar cycles. As they approached the pool, Halden noticed small silver objects at the bottom. He crouched and peered closer. Rings. Necklaces. A crown shaped like a crescent. Offerings scattered in the water. The temptation was overwhelming. He reached out as if to touch the surface, but Rivas grabbed his wrist. Oedo not take from the goddess. The guide warned. That water is not for us. Halden pulled back reluctantly, but the Chronicles gleam haunted him. The first omen they set camp in the chamber, too weary to climb back out before nightfall. The pool's dim reflection provided enough light to move around, but none dared to stray too far. That night, under the rising moon, something changed. The water began to ripple though no stone had fallen into it. The silver offerings glowed faintly, and a soft humming filled the chamber. The sound was not from the walls, nor the water, but from within their very bones. The porter's eyes went wide. He dropped to his knees, clutching his charm, whispering prayers. Then came the voice. It was not spoken aloud but entered their minds like a whisper carried by the wind. A euro oh you are seen. A euro Maria Alvarez gasped. She clutched her head. A euro did you hear that? A euro Halden nodded, trembling but exhilarated. A euro oh yes, a euro yes, I did. A euro the humming grew louder, resonating with the silver masks in the passage beyond. Their hollow eyes seemed to shimmer. The pool a euro's surface shivered violently, and for just a moment, the reflection in the water was not of the chamber above a euro, but of something else. A massive silver temple, gleaming under the moonlight. Priests in crescent crowns. Sacrifices laid on altars. A serpent of impossible size coiling through the structure like a living god. Then, as quickly as it came, the vision vanished. The water was still again. The humming ceased. The chamber returned to silence. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, Halden whispered, almost reverently, A euro oh euro they crossed into the sacred. The temple of the moon is real. A euro but Maria Alvarez, her hands trembling, whispered a different truth. A euro and it knows we are here. A euro the silence after the vision weighed heavily on the group. None of them wanted to admit the truth, but all of them had felt it. Something in that chamber was alive. They did not sleep. The masks in the passage seemed to shift when no one was looking. The pool remained eerily still, but the silver crown at its bottom glowed faintly, like a beacon. Halden stared at it for hours, unable to pull his eyes away. The pull of the crown by morning, Revis urged them to leave. A euro have seen enough. This place is not meant for us. A euro but Halden would not hear of it. A euro are closer than anyone in history to understanding the moon cult. To turn back now would be to abandon everything. A euro Carter was torn between fascination and dread. A euro oh Halden, you saw what I saw. That wasn't a euro just history. That was a euro something else. That thing in the water a euro oh it was a vision. A euro Halden snapped. A euro orologious symbolism. Nothing more. A euro but Alvarez shook her head. Her voice was low, urgent. A euro oino, it wasn't a euro symbolism. That serpent was real to them. It was their god. And gods demand sacrifice. A euro her words lingered, but Halden a euro's obsession drowned out their caution. That night, when the others drifted into restless sleep, Halden crept back to the pool. The crown gleamed at him like the moon itself. Without hesitation, he plunged his hand into the water. The moment his fingers brushed the crown, the chamber came alive. The pool boiled violently, sending waves slapping against the stone. The silver offerings rattled and clanged together. The humming sound returned, louder than ever. Halden wrenched the crown free and stumbled back. The water went black, as if ink had spilled across its surface. And then, from that darkness, a shape began to rise. The serpent awakens, a massive head emerged, scales shimmering silver in the flickering light. Eyes like molten moonstone locked onto Halden. The body uncoiled behind it, impossibly long, winding through the pool as though it had no end. The others woke to the thunderous roar that shook the chamber. Carter froze in terror. Alvarez scrambled for her notebook, though her hands shook so badly she could barely hold it. The porter screamed and fled toward the passage of masks a euro, but the moment he stepped under the arch, every mask turned. Their hollow mouths opened, releasing a shrill wail. The man dropped instantly, lifeless, his face frozen in silent horror. The Serpenta Euro's gaze returned to Halden. Its voice filled all their minds at once. A euro o thief of the goddess. Bearer of what is not yours. A euro Halden trembled but clutched the crown to his chest. A euro I only wish to learn. To tell the world of your greatness. A euro the Serpenta Euro's eyes narrowed. A euro o knowledge is not given. It is earned. And it is paid in blood. A euro the trial of the moon the serpent coiled around the chamber, its body scraping the walls like grinding stone. The silver glow illuminated symbols across the ceiling that none of them had noticed before a euro, symbols of sacrifice. Hearts offered to the moon. Blood pouring into the pool. The serpent spoke again. A euro if you would wear the crown, you must prove your devotion. One must be given to the goddess. A euro silence fell. Revis whispered hoarsely. A euro oh it demands a sacrifice. A euro oino. A euro Alvarez said fiercely. A euro oh are not killers. We came as explorers, not worshippers. A euro but Halden, sweat dripping from his brow, was already considering. His obsession with discovery, with fame, had twisted into something darker. He looked at Carter, then at Revis. His hand tightened on the crown. Before he could speak, the serpent lashed its tail across the floor. Stone shattered. A fissure opened near the pool, and from it, silver mist poured out, curling around their feet like smoke. A euro ecus, a euro the voice demanded. A euro o or the temple will choose for you. A euro the betrayal. Carter was the first to move. He shoved Halden back and shouted, a euro Oeno crown is worth this. Drop it. A euro. Halden struck him with the metal, desperation blazing in his eyes. A euro Othis is history. This is destiny. You think ye a euro LL walk away now? A euro the serpent hissed approvingly. Alvarez tried to intervene, but Rivas pulled her back. A euro Oedo not get between them. The goddess demands a trial. Let it play. A euro the fight was short and brutal. Carter wrestled Halden near the edge of the pool. In the struggle, Halden raised the crown like a blade and brought it down. Carter cried out and fell into the water. The pool swallowed him instantly. The black surface rippled once, then grew calm. The Serpenta Euro's voice filled the chamber, satisfied, a euro oblid for the goddess. The trial is past. A euro. Halden stood trembling, crown dripping with Cartera Euro's blood. His eyes were wild, but his lips curved into a smile. A euro O am chosen, a euro he whispered. The coronation. The serpent lowered its head until it loomed before him. With trembling hands, Halden placed the crown on his head. At once, the chamber erupted with light. Silver fire raced across the carvings, igniting every crescent, every serpent etched into the walls. The masks in the passage wailed again, but this time it was not death a euro, it was worship. Halden screamed as the crown burned into his skull. His veins glowed silver, his eyes turned white. His voice twisted into something inhuman. A euro I see it. I see everything. The temple, the sacrifices, the eternal moon. I am her priest reborn. A euro. Alvarez fell to her knees, horrified. A euro O Halden, you don't a euro t know what you a euro ve done. A euro. Rivas, grim and steady, whispered. A euro Oa is no longer Halden. A euro. The serpent coiled around him, its massive body pressing against the stone walls. A euro. Old crown is bound. The priest is chosen. The temple lives again. A euro. The chamber shook violently. Rocks fell from the ceiling. The fissures widened, and from them poured more silver mist. Alvarez realized with dawning horror that the temple was awakening a euro, an entire structure buried for centuries, rising once more. The escape. Rivas grabbed Alvarez a euro's arm. A euro O must leave. Now. A euro. They ran for the passage of masks, the Serpenta Euro's laughter echoing in their skulls. Behind them, Halden a euro, if he was still Halden a euro, stood at the pool, arms raised, his voice chanting words in a language neither of them understood. As they fled, the masks screamed, their hollow eyes bleeding silver light. Alvarez covered her ears but still felt the sound inside her bones. One by one, the lanterns they carried shattered. Darkness swallowed the passage. Only the faint silver glow guided them upward. When they finally stumbled out into the daylight, gasping for air, they realized the mountain itself was trembling. Stones tumbled down the cliffs. Birds fled in swarms. The earth rumbled as though something vast was stirring below. They did not stop running until the staircase behind them crumbled into rubble, sealing the entrance forever. The omen. Hours later, as the sun set, they collapsed on a ridge overlooking the valley. The ruins below were silent once more, as if nothing had ever happened. But Alvarez knew better. She had seen Halden a euro's transformation. She had heard the Serpenta Euro's voice. She had felt the Krona Euro's power. Rivas sat beside her, face grim. A euro. Old goddess has her priest again. The temple will not sleep forever. A euro. Alvarez nodded, clutching her notebook. She knew she would write about this a euro, but not to publish. Not yet. The world was not ready. As night fell, the moon rose over the Andes. And for just a moment, Alvarez swore she saw silver light flicker from deep within the valley, like the eye of something vast watching her from the dark. The return to civilization. For days, Alvarez and Rivas stumbled through the mountain paths, half-starved, half-mad from what they had seen. Every time the moon rose, Alvarez swore she could feel the Silver Serpenta Euro's gaze upon her. Dreams tormented Hera Euro, visions of Halden chanting, his skin glowing with silver veins, the crown fusing into his skull. When they finally reached the nearest village, the locals avoided them. Their ragged appearance and haunted eyes frightened even the bravest. An old woman brought them water and whispered, "A you saw it, didn't you?" The Temple of the Moon. Alvarez froze. You know of it. The woman nodded grimly. All do. Our ancestors warned us never to go near that valley. The temple takes what it wants. Always. Revis pressed her. Then why does no one speak of it? Because speaking its name calls its gaze. She replied, crossing herself. And its gaze never leaves. The curse of the crown. Back in Lima, Alvarez attempted to bury herself in her work. She locked her notes away, refusing to publish anything. But no matter how hard she tried to suppress the memories, the crown haunted her. Everywhere she looked, she saw crescents carved into shadows, serpents coiled into patterns of smoke. At night, she dreamed of Halden's voice echoing, I am her priest reborn. One evening, she awoke to find a thin line of silver dust across her desk. It shimmered faintly in the moonlight, spelling words in a language she didn't recognize. Her hands shook as she brushed it away but the dust returned the next night, thicker, spreading across the walls. Revis, too, was suffering. His health declined rapidly, though no doctor could explain why. His skin grew pale, his eyes hollow. He told Alvarez in a hushed voice, oath crown marked us. We are tied to it now. The spread of the mist news began to trickle in from the Andes. Shepherds whispered of animals found drained of blood. Travelers spoke of silver mist pooling in the valleys at night, swallowing whole caravans. Entire villages disappeared, their homes abandoned but still warm, as if everyone had simply vanished at once. Alvarez knew what it meant. The serpent was no longer confined to its temple. With Halden as its vessel, its influence was spreading. She wanted to return, to stop it, but Revis begged her not to. You cannot fight a god. He said. You cannot fight the moon. Still, Alvarez could not rest. She began studying ancient Mesopotamian and Andean texts, searching for clues. To her shock, she discovered similarities between the serpent goddess of the Andes and lunar cults across the ancient world. Different names, different lands, but always the same imagery: the serpent, the crown, the demand for sacrifice. This was not a local myth. It was something far older. Something global. The last journey months later, Revis grew too weak to continue. On his deathbed, he gripped Alvarez's hand. Opromise me you won't t go back. He rasped. Opromise me you ll let the temple sleep. But Alvarez could not promise. She kissed his forehead, whispered a prayer, and left him to rest. That night, she booked passage back to the mountains. Her return was met with resistance. The villagers begged her to leave, warning that the valley was cursed more than ever. At night, silver lights danced across the ridges. Strange chanting carried on the wind. But Alvarez pressed on. She climbed alone to the ridge where she and Revis had once escaped. The ruins were visible again. Part of the temple had forced itself back above ground, jagged stone towers piercing through the earth. Mist curled from the cracks, glowing faintly under the moon. And at the heart of it all, standing before the risen staircase, was Halden. The priest of the moon. He was no longer the man she remembered. His body was gaunt, his skin etched with silver veins that pulsed like rivers of light. The crown had fused entirely with his skull, its points jutting out like horns. His eyes burned white, devoid of humanity. You returned. He said, his voice layered with echoes, as if 100 voices spoke through him. Halden. Alvarez whispered. Please, fight it. You don't have to serve this thing. He laughed, the sound chilling. Serve. I am the goddess vessel. Through me, she will awaken fully. Through me, the world will remember her. The ground rumbled beneath her. From the fissures, more serpents emerged. Smaller than the great one, but each the size of a man, their scales glowing silver. They coiled around Halden like guardians. Alvarez held her notebook to her chest, though she knew it was no weapon. This will destroy the world. It will cleanse it. He said. The old gods will rise again. Humanity will bow, as it once did, to the eternal moon. The final confrontation. The temple shook violently. The great serpent itself began to rise, its massive body pushing through the ruins, its head towering above them both. Its voice thundered across the valley, "A oath crown is bound. The priest is mine. The world shall feed the moon." Alvarez knew she had one choice. She opened her notebook not to write, but to burn. She had copied every symbol, every chant, every detail of the temple. If the serpent fed on remembrance, then she would erase its story. She struck a match with trembling hands and set the pages ablaze. The fire caught quickly, consuming years of research. The serpent shrieked, its voice shaking the mountains. Halden screamed in fury, clutching his head as the crown pulsed violently. Awino. You cannot erase her. The memory is eternal. But Alvarez kept feeding pages to the fire. With every word lost, the serpent weakened. Its form flickered, its body dissolving into mist. The smaller serpents writhed and vanished. Halden fell to his knees, blood pouring from his eyes. At last, with a deafening roar, the great serpent collapsed into silver dust, scattering on the wind. The crown shattered on Halden's head. He crumpled lifelessly to the ground. The aftermath. Alvarez staggered from the ruins, smoke rising behind her. She collapsed on the ridge and watched as the temple sank once more into the earth, swallowed by stone and silence. When dawn broke, the valley was still. No mist, no voices, no serpents. But she knew the victory was not complete. She had burned her notes, but others still whispered of the temple. Stories lived on in local legends, in the memories of those who had glimpsed the silver light. And if memory was enough to awaken the goddess, then this was not the end. The Eternal Watcher. Years later, in a quiet library far from the Andes, a researcher stumbled upon an obscure mention of Omun Serpenta in a forgotten manuscript. He copied the passage into his notes. That night, as the moon rose, silver mist filled his room.